patriarchy has a plan. Patriarchy closes ranks to ensure that women aren't getting the roles that they deserve so that they cannot get the power that they deserve.
Hi, you've tuned into State of South Asia, a podcast from Himal Southasian, where we have the best minds on the region to unpack crucial issues affecting our politics, cultures, environments, and societies. I'm your host, Narayan. This morning, that is the morning of September 11th, I saw a story on the front page of the newspaper on how the Kerala High Court had pulled up the Kerala state government for its inaction over the findings of the Hema Committee report. This report is a result of a study into the problems faced by women in the Malayalam film industry. While the report documents egregious instances of sexual assault and harassment, and these have found the most attention and mention in the media, it also finds systemic gender discrimination in the form of pay disparity, lack of facilities for women artists and workers, poor working conditions for junior artists, the absence of proper contracts and terms of employment, and it has also suggested measures that can be taken against such abuses and discrimination. The report, although it was delayed by many years, is quite remarkable in that it is the first time that any such systemic study has been done, calling out power structures and cultures of silence in which this industry and any film industry across India operates. Joining me today is film critic and journalist Anna Vetticad, who has been following the story over the years. Thank you so much for being here, Anna. So, about today's news of the High Court scolding the Kerala government for its inaction on the report. Now, the government itself constituted this committee and commissioned the report. But do you think that they now find that this is, too much of a hot potato that they don't want to handle?
I think, Nayantara, that the Kerala government found that this is too much of a hot potato perhaps a few months after they set up the committee. I do not think that they were expecting the Women in Cinema Collective of Kerala, whose initiative it was to get the government to form this committee. I don't think the government expected the WCC to be so persistent and to, in fact, stick around and not be dissolved after a few years. WCC was formed in 2017, soon after the sexual assault on a woman actor in Kerala. And after the Hema Committee report was submitted in 2019, these women of the Malayalam film industry simply would not stop asking the government why they were not releasing the report. Now, this has come at a great cost to these women, yet they persisted. And I think the government was hoping that they would get tired, and they did not. And as a result, ultimately, due to pressure from the WCC and public opinion, ultimately they had to release the report. So, yes, I do think that they felt for a while that it's a hot potato. And now, of course, because they know what's on the pages that they have kept back, there are names of powerful people apparently. And already, as a result of the release of this report, there are many women coming out and speaking up publicly, revealing their identities about problems they've faced in the industry, which again means that there are powerful men who are being named, which means the government has to take action.
Sure. Okay, so a little background on how all this came about and, elaborating on some of the details that you mentioned. In February 2017, several men sexually assaulted a female actor in a moving car in the city of Kochi. Investigations into the case indicated that a male superstar, Dilip, had orchestrated the attack, and he became the main accused in the case. So, after this very shocking incident, several women actors in the Malayalam language film industry came together to form the Women in Cinema Collective. First, to stand by the woman who was assaulted, and then to try to bring a change in the way women in the industry are treated, to make it a place where women could work with dignity, and also for a gender sensitivity that would also reflect on screen. So, this in fact preceded the Me Too movement in 2018. The Women in Cinema Collective petitioned the Kerala government to examine how women were being treated, and the government set up this committee chaired by by former judge K Hema, along with a retired bureaucrat and a senior cine artist. The report was first submitted to the government in December 2019, and after which there was little word on it. And then in August this year, on the directions of the High Court again, the government released 233 pages of the report in which some sections were redacted, Even the portions that have been released have very disturbing details, which can have ripple effects through the industry. In fact, they are already having these effects. There have been several allegations of sexual abuse and misconduct in the wake that have been made in the wake of this report, and a number of police complaints as well. I think at last count, there were about 17 police complaints. And Anna, this is a bare bones summary of what has happened. This story has so many angles and so many layers. I want to ask you, though, what was your first reaction when you saw the findings of this report?
I think I was very conscious from the moment WCC was formed that this was a pioneering movement. There is nothing like it anywhere in the world. And the fact that they stuck around despite the consequences that they have faced from the industry, they have lost work. Many of them have come out and said they have lost work. The fact that they've stuck around, they've remained united and persistent is in itself a very important development for India's women's rights movement, not just for a single film industry. But the fact that this report came out, I was thrilled, if one can use that word thrilled for a report that is revealing so many disturbing aspects of the Malayalam film industry. But I was thrilled because it was very clear that change is inevitable. It will be difficult, the road ahead is long, but change is inevitable. So, in that sense, I was thrilled. Having said that, when I read the report, there were parts of it that made me angry, not because of the descriptions given by women and men who testified before the committee of their experiences. I was angry because the members of the committee themselves revealed, at least two of them, a degree of conservatism that is deeply disturbing and tells you what women in our society are up against. Now, Justice Hema is clearly a very well meaning person, and she clearly is very invested in the advancement of women's rights. But there are some observations she's made that are quite casual and unthinking. And at least one of them ended up implying, although I don't think that was her intention, but it ended up implying that the only way you can be successful as an actor in a film industry is if you sleep your way to the top. Now, this led to the trolling of successful women actors in the Malayalam film industry. Any woman professional knows that even in industries where there is pressure, it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean every woman succumbs to that pressure. B, if a woman does, please don't judge her. But this does not mean everyone does. And those who don't pay a heavy price for it in terms of mental health and their career advancement. So for her to make observations like that, it was very troubling. Not all, when she made recommendations, it felt to me like, despite the fact that she's been in the position she's been in, there was not enough clarity on how one could implement some of her recommendations. Like she says at one point that there should be contracts for those who want contracts and who wish to demand and insist that they want contracts. I'm not quoting her exact words, but this is the gist of what she said. But the whole point of an industry that is not giving contracts, especially to junior artists and people who have less power, is that those people don't have power. So if you are putting the onus on them to insist on the contract, then the whole purpose of you saying there should be contracts is defeated. The second section, but again, like Justice Hema is clearly very well intentioned, and one can see she's worked hard on her part of the report. It's in three sections. One is authored by her, one by K Sharada, who is an actor, a veteran actor, also part of the committee, and then one by K B Vasalakumari, who's a retired bureaucrat. The section by Sharada made me furious. She makes very damaging comments about women, insulting comments about women, and it's her writing is so skeletal, so bare bones. It's almost as if she didn't care enough to elaborate on the points she makes. K B Vasalakumari's section is the section every student of cinema, law, and human decency should read. It is so intelligent, it is so clearly articulated. She contextualizes everything that she says. She explains, puts it in a global context, talks about what's happening in other industries across the world, what's happening in the rest of India. She gives us a sociological perspective, and this is particularly important in the part where she talks about pay parity. because many Malayalam film industry, some of them have tried to mislead the public into thinking that the Hema Committee report says that everyone must get equal pay. So one of the members of the AMMA, the Association of Malayalam Movie Artists, on the very first day had mockingly said, "Oh, are you saying that X superstar should get only the amount of money that you would pay Y star?" And he named someone who would not get that much money. No, of course not. When women or when the Justice Hema Committee is talking about pay parity, you are talking about a very like a basic. Now, why should somebody who is working as a light assistant on a set get less than a woman, get more than a woman who's doing the same job? Of course, box office, the market determine how much you're going to pay a star in your film. But again, let's not pretend that all of this is driven by market forces alone. Film industries across the world and across India insist that money talks, and therefore they pay big stars, male stars, what the market is willing to pay back to them. That's a load of rubbish, because they are willing to give men the chance to fail again and again and again and again at the box office until those men get they build a following over time, and therefore they have that opening weekend collection that the industry claims they assure the industry, but obviously there is no assurance, because otherwise no film with any of these male stars would ever flop, which we know is not the case. There are many films they star in that are flopping. Some of the biggest stars of India, male stars of India, have had numerous flops before they had their first hit, and then many more flops than before the second hit. But despite that, the industry will give them the chances to fail and will not cut their pay because they've failed repeatedly. But a woman, goodness, you're judging her from day one. You're already telling her you have 5 years in the industry, 10 years in the industry. You're playing on her mind. You're putting
Yeah.
pressures on her. You're not putting on the men in terms of the clothes she should wear, how she should look, etc., etc., etc. And you do not give her enough roles where she's a central character, a larger than life character, one who can build up her larger than life image and then build up that kind of the same kind of fan following that a man can. You don't give her any of that. And
Yeah.
then, even despite all these odds, when a woman does become a big star, you will not grant her an inch. The minute one of her films fails, even if she's had 3 4 hits right before that, she's still immediately written off, and the whole industry, including and the media too, is saying, look, didn't we say women-centered films don't make money? Now, I have said, actually in brief, what Valsalakumari has explained beautifully to the public. So in that sense, this
Mm.
document is both heartening and depressing. Depressing because of the content of the comments of the women who deposed before the committee, but also depressing because of the things it reveals about Sharada's mindset, but heartening because there were women who had the courage to come and speak their truth to the committee and trusted the committee and trusted that the government would take action. And heartening because Valsala Kumari is the ally that every woman needs, the ally that you and I need in positions of power.
Yeah, and very quickly go through some of the other findings, and to start off with talking about people who deposed. Of course, their identities have been protected, but let's just talk about what kinds of artists and actors have deposed. And you said there were both men and women who deposed before this committee.
Yes, in fact, that should be an indicator to everyone, because patriarchy tends to vilify feminism and say this is an anti-men movement, but actually feminism is a movement that is pro-men, it is pro-gender equality, and anyone who studies feminism closely will understand that this gender equality and the rights that women demand will end up benefiting men. There are men in this industry who got the opportunity to depose before the committee and explain the problems that they have in the industry. This includes, there were men who spoke about a certain a power group in the industry that manipulates the whole industry, that bans people who do not bow to the power group's wishes or may just have offended that power group. So these were men. Now, if the rights of junior artists, because it wasn't just movies, it wasn't just big stars who deposed before the committee. In fact, it wasn't just actors. There were junior artists, there were people in all departments of the film industry. Now, if the working conditions for junior artists or assistant directors improves, the Hema Committee's findings aren't directed at saying improve only the conditions of women junior artists. Now, the Hema Committee report, for instance, has talked about the lack of toilets on so many sets. Women told the committee that they would avoid, when they were on a shoot, they would avoid drinking water because they were so afraid that they would need to go to a toilet, and there's no toilet. So you have to relieve yourself where? In the fields, or walk 10 minutes away. So the women who said they fell ill because of this. Now, if this results in an enforcement of ensuring that every single film set and every single outdoor location makes toilets available to the entire team, the entire crew. Will only women benefit? No, of course, men will benefit too. So, any intelligent man should recognize that feminism, this movement, the Hema Committee report, is actually in the interests of the industry as a whole.
Right. You know, the Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act that was enacted in India in 2013, and this is relevant for any sort of workplace, right? What does the Hema Committee report find about how the Malayalam film industry has operated in terms of implementing posh recommendations?
In fact, even before the Hema Committee report, the women of the Women in Cinema Collective had gone to court and asked for an enforcement, and a guarantee that there would be posh committees on all sets. But because there was this whole debate, what is a workspace? A woman goes for an audition, and this is something that the Hema Committee discusses at length. For women in cinema, the workspace begins long before they actually go to the workspace that is technically considered the workspace. You are called for an audition. Where do you go? Sometimes people call you to their hotel rooms for auditions. And while there could be a formal setup with a reliable producer doing this, we know that that's usually a dangerous situation. We know, as in the Harvey Weinstein case in the United States, that becomes an excuse, to prey on women who are usually women starting out and struggling and not in a position to fight back. But even if they fight back, it's a dangerous position to be in. Just it's physical danger, right? So, but despite the fact that there was a directive that there should be posh committees on all film sets, as far as I am aware, this has not been enforced by this has not been implemented by many producers in the industry. However, in the 7 years since the formation of the Women in Cinema Collective, because there has been a great deal of awareness building by WCC, there has been considerable change. In fact, in the 5 years since the committee report was submitted, the WCC women have said that some of the findings in the committee report might be dated because there are producers who are self aware, who have listened to what WCC has said and have started making changes on their sets, ensuring that there are posh committees, trying to making sure that there are toilets for their crew, and so on and so forth. But obviously, this cannot be dependent. It cannot be reliant on somebody's goodness and somebody's conscience. It has to be codified. It has to be strictly implemented, and in a place, because work. The thing with the arts and the thing with all creative fields is that it's not like an office space where you go to office and there are work hours, and there's a certain fixed structure, and so on and so forth. And in all creative fields, I feel that the informality that is necessary for that field, for people to function properly in that field, also becomes an excuse for predators and to take advantage of, which is why it's so easy to say, oh, but I was just joking. Come on, you don't have a sense of humor. You've worked for, you're shooting through the night. People tend to relax because this is not a regular work hour. Oh, come on. We are family. You call yourself family, and then you misbehave with the woman. There has just been a complaint by a woman about, and she said that with a particular director, there was an explanation being given for how a shot should be taken, and she felt uncomfortable in the way it was explained. The Hema Committee report submission will hopefully result in intimacy coordinators being mandatory on all film sets where there is a requirement for such shoots, so that there is a certain professional way in which these explanations are given, and there is a certain protocol, so that a director who wishes to take advantage cannot, because everything is so clearly, there are such clear guidelines for all of these, for things like this. Now, it's inevitable. There will be lovemaking scenes, there will be sex scenes in films, but the whole point is, it should be, the shooting should be functional. It cannot be an opportunity for either the male star involved, or those who are in charge of the shoot, to take advantage of the woman who's in the shoot, or even the man for that matter. The man's bodily autonomy is as important. And yes, so these are all things that have been discussed in the Hema Committee report, but some of this has already been discussed widely by WCC over the years while they were waiting for the Hema Committee report to come out.
You mentioned the Association of Malayalam Movie Artists, and many have pointed out the irony of this name, which is abbreviated to Amma, which in many South Indian languages means mother. But this is an association that actually came out in support of the main accused, in the February 2017 assault case. And even with the Hema Committee report findings, they've either been silent or dismissive of it. Give us a sense of how this association used to operate, before 2017, and what its stand has been on all these revelations since then.
Even before 2017, there were allegations that the association is acting as a power. There is a section of the industry that's acting as a power group, that this association is not acting entirely in the interests of its members, but in the interests of powerful members. And in fact, immediately after this actor assault case, there were the survivor herself and a couple of members of the Women in Cinema Collective resigned because of the attitude of AMMA. Now, initially, when the survivor went to the police, there was a lot of support for her, because initially nobody knew who was responsible for the assault, because the men who assaulted her weren't famous actors. But when the police investigation revealed that a superstar, the superstar Dilip, was allegedly a conspirator, then suddenly the industry was divided. Then it became about then the support for the survivor it became reliant on how much clout, that because Dilip is an extremely powerful man. He has interest in the exhibition sector. He is a producer. He's a extremely successful actor, and therefore, he has the power to damage careers. And suddenly, Amma's support became iffy. There were programs that they had where on stage they were spoofing the Women in Cinema Collective, and they were mocking them. Well, Malayalam cinema itself is, it's a mixed bag. On the one hand, you have extremely progressive films. On the other hand, you have extremely regressive films. And many of the members of AMMA are themselves producing or directing or writing extremely regressive cinema. And their public statements, some of their public statements have been regressive. Now, as soon as the Hema Committee report came out, immediately they all went on the defensive. As I mentioned earlier, there was one person who said how silly it is. Justice Hema, he said Justice Hema clearly doesn't understand the functioning of the film industry. How can you pay everyone the same money? That's not what the Hema Committee report has said. Then they put a couple of their women members in front of mics and cameras, and the women said, "We have not faced any of these. We've not had any of the experiences that have been described by women in the Hema Committee report." Now, nobody is saying that every woman has the exact same experiences. Nobody is even saying that if a man has raped one woman, he has gone and raped every single woman he knows. So this is a pointless comment that people make to discredit women survivors. But there is a feeling that because of the delay in the report, there is a feeling that the government really wanted to protect the powerful men who were named. And So since then, since the release of the report, it's AMMA just went into complete disarray. They were on the defensive. They got other members of the industry to make mocking comments about the report and the Women in Cinema collective. And it may all be not connected, but suddenly there are allegations being made against a prominent member of WCC, saying that she used to have drug parties in her house. Why this is relevant to this discussion in any case is a question to be asked. But defaming, vilifying, slut shaming, because these things take a toll on your mental health. They also affect your credibility in the public eye. And clearly it's been an orchestrated campaign. So anyway, then the executive committee all resigned. And they said Mohanlal, who is heading it and is a major superstar, for those who don't follow the Malayalam film industry, is a huge star, one of the biggest in the history of Indian cinema. And he said that he felt that they should resign because these allegations were not being made against these allegations can't be addressed by AMMA. They should be addressed by the Malayalam film industry as a whole. But if you're an association of movie artists, then where's your accountability? Are you saying you did not know that all of this was happening? Because many of the things mentioned in the Hema Committee report are things that were being discussed behind the scenes. People spoke these things off the record. They knew. Why would they not know? These are things happening on their own sets. So, how can you say the industry has to address it? You are a powerful person. You were in charge of an association. What were you doing all of these years? So, they resigned, and now there is, although the narrative in Kerala, as of now, the public discourse and the media discourse is extremely supportive, but there is a danger unless the media and activists make a very strong effort to ensure that this doesn't go off track. There is a danger that soon things are going to turn, and it's going to be more about shaming women who spoke to the committee or who've spoken out since then, and badgering them to take action that society considers acceptable action, instead of understanding the trauma that a woman goes through when she faces sexual violence. There is a focus almost entirely in the public discourse and in the media coverage on the sexual harassment and violence, whereas the whole point of the Hema Committee report and the whole point of WCC's campaign has been that there should be ground level change. There has to be systemic change, because this is not just true of a film industry, it's true of society as a whole. And unless the entire infrastructure of the industry is changed, there's no point in talking just about sexual violence and harassment, because if that's going to be the entire focus, then it appears that there is only an interest in the most sensational aspects of the Hema Committee report and not the boring hard work that goes into bringing about social change.
And among the attempts to discredit the report, the Kerala Producers Association actually wrote to the Chief Minister saying that the committee did not have any experts. But, kind of talking about the change of the entire infrastructure of the industry, apart from the Actors Association, there are many associations and unions that have been instrumental in upholding the culture of silence around abuse. In the years that you've reported on the Malayalam film industry and what you've read from this report, how has that worked?
All Indian film industries are very feudal setups, and the Malayalam film industry certainly is. I mean, you can see that in the way, even in their public statements, younger stars, directors, everyone has to genuflect before some of the biggest superstars in the industry. And in a state like Kerala, which is known for its grassroots movements, it's a state that is associated with resistance movements. It is a state that has consistently had the highest literacy rate in the country. It is a state that is admired across the country for its astonishingly good human development indices that match some of the most developed progressive countries in the world, whether it's the maternal mortality rate, the infant mortality rate. In a state like this, to discover that basics like toilets, and contracts were not a given on film sets is shocking. In fact, what the committee has is an expert in law, which is Justice K Hema, an expert in the film industry, which is K Sharada, and an expert in administration, which is K B Vasalakumari. What more expertise are they looking for? This is an effort to mislead the public. And one has to ask, because you mentioned unions, where are all the trade unions in the state of Kerala? This is a state that is associated with communism. It is known for its trade union movement. What Everything that has been brought up in the Hema Committee report, these are labor rights issues. These are workers' rights. When an artist says, or a hairstylist or a makeup artist says that the informality of arrangements with film producers resulted in them being asked to do work for more days than was agreed upon initially, payments not being made at all, or payments less than what was initially agreed upon being made, or you say you're told you're going to be working for 10 days, then you're made to work for 30 days and you're not paid for 30 days, you're paid only for 10 days. Where are all the trade unions? Why is this an issue that only the WCC is bringing up? Why is it that it wasn't a a statewide discussion even before this? So I think that while the Hema Committee report is about the Malayalam film industry, I think it is a moment of introspection for the state as a whole. And I think that it is also a potential turning point for all film industries in the country if they are willing to pay attention to what's happening in Kerala. It is very clear that the men of India's other film industries would like very much to pretend that the Hema Committee report doesn't exist. Rajnikant was asked. Rajnikant, one of the biggest stars in Indian history, was asked, and he said he wasn't even aware of the Hema Committee report. Really? He doesn't read the newspapers? Um, there is Jiva, again, a star of the Tamil film industry. He says, oh, these things happen only in Kerala. Really? You've not heard of Chinmay Sripada from your own state of Tamil Nadu? You've not heard of Shruti Hariharan? You've not heard of Leena Manimekalai? And how much these women have had to suffer because they spoke out during the Me Too movement? The West Bengal women artists have written to the chief minister, as you know, and have asked for a Hema Committee style expert study on their industry. But as you see, like any positive reaction coming from outside Kerala is coming from women.
Let me take a quick break to remind our listeners of a story that you wrote for Himal last year. As most people on social media in India will know, the movie Jawan, starring Shah Rukh Khan, celebrated 1 year of its release just this weekend. When it came out with much fanfare in September 2023, Anna watched the film and wrote an insightful review. She found that the blockbuster had the veneer of being political, but it was mostly hyperbole. So do go visit our website, himalmag.com, and read that story if you haven't read it already. It takes a lot to bring you insightful analysis and well researched stories. To produce in depth, independent coverage of the whole of South Asia, we at Himal rely on listeners like you. So support our work, which will help us bring you more stories and produce more podcasts like this one. You can become a patron of the magazine by clicking on the link in the episode notes, or by going to our website and clicking Support Himal. You can also sign up to our newsletter to keep up with our latest stories, events, and more. You'll see a sign up link to our newsletters also in the episode notes. Now back to our conversation with Anna Vetticad. Anna, let's talk about why it has been and continues to be difficult for women to speak up. Now, this happens in any field, in any industry, when there is a sexual abuse or misconduct case, because there is a culture of victim shaming. But, in the film industries, particularly in India, you have this phenomenon of fan clubs that play a major role in online, sometimes even offline trolling and attacks on people who accuse their idols of anything at all. How bad has this been for the women who have spoken up?
Oh, it's been terrible. And I'll give you the example of Parvati Tiruvottu, who is a very big star in the Malayalam film industry, an extremely interesting woman, a founder member of the Women in Cinema Collective. Two things, because you spoke about consequences. You can see from the filmography, has suffered consequences for being a vocal member of WCC. You know, how it is when women complain of discrimination, when women are outspoken, then we are labeled as troublemakers. And Parvati, a few years ago, had raised the issue of the glorification of sexual violence and patriarchy and the trivialization of sexual violence, the commodification of women in Malayalam cinema. And she happened, this was a public event, she happened to name a film called Kasaba, starring Mammootty. Again, I mentioned Mohanlal earlier. Anyone in India knows, but for those who don't follow the Malayalam film industry, Mammootty is a great actor and one of the biggest stars. Again, one of the biggest stars when the history of Indian cinema is written. His name will be there in one of the earliest pages. But this film is so disturbing, Nayantara, because of the manner in which he behaves with a woman, a police woman. He's a policeman. This police woman who is his superior at the workplace in terms of rank. And when she pulls him up for something, and of course she's portrayed as being a haughty woman, he says something to her to the effect, well, in effect, it's a rape threat. Because he says something to her in the exact words I cannot quote, but to the effect that, you know, you will not be able to walk if I had my way with you. And when Parvati brought this up, she was trolled mercilessly online. And it's not, you know, not just the word trolling has become, you know, it's not seen as as serious as, it's not taken as seriously as it should be because there's so much of it happening around. But she got death and rape threats. Now, Parvati spoke to Mammootty, and Mammootty told her, and he also told the media, that he doesn't get into these things. What does that mean? They are your fans who are abusing a woman and threatening her in your name. And you have acted in Kasaba is some of Mammootty's filmography, like Malayalam cinema in general, is a picture in contrast. He acts in some beautiful films and then he acts in some cringeworthy films. Now, his beautiful films are films that are so sensitive to gender discrimination and gender equality, and you cannot raise your voice for a woman who is being victimized in your name. And it's not, I can tell you from personal experience, I wrote a review of Kasaba and I was wildly trolled for it. But many years later, I happened to open the DM box on an official Facebook page that I have, and I don't usually open that DM box. And I suddenly realized that for years together, a particular Mammootty fan had been sending me the choicest of abuses and threats in Malayalam, and he had gone on and on and on. These are things that take a toll on our mental health. And we know, for anyone who's following film industries in India from behind the scenes, many of these fan clubs, these are well organized networks that the star himself has a role in.
And Anna, tell us a little more about that because it's very different from individual fans kind of, going after people that they're annoyed with. But these are very organized setups.
In fact, Nayantara, if you look at the credits of most Malayalam films, especially that are centered around male stars, you will see at the start, thanks to the Mohanlal, All Kerala Mohanlal Fans Association or the Mammootty Fans Association, or these fan networks are thanked. And they are not. There have even been videos, and this is not just a Mohanlal and a Mammootty, all the major male stars, a couple of the female stars too, but it's mostly the male stars, have these widespread networks of fans and they're very organized. These are not just random people here and there who love a star. They make plans, they strategize. Because I've followed the film industry from behind the scenes, I know that the stars make an effort to stay, in some cases, the stars make an effort to stay in touch while the fans are just organizing themselves. But in the case of the Southern Indian film industries in particular, the stars are involved in these networks. There are some videos that have been seen online of stars attending these meetings. So this is not just happening somewhere in the air. This is very much a part. This is organized attacks on anyone who calls you out for what you do that's wrong, or for the quality of your cinema, to ensure that um, people think twice before speaking out against you. In India, there has been now for 10 years a very long conversation about the BJP trolls, correct? And in the United States, there's been conversations about organized trolling by Donald Trump's people. This is no less than that. And the whole idea is to steer the discourse. These fan clubs are repositories of an aggressive masculinity, and they're filled with men who see these women of the Women in Cinema Collective and any woman who's speaking out as being um, an enemy of men and out to get men and out to destroy men, which is why, again, they immediately started a conversation. As soon as the Hema Committee report came out, they started a conversation online about false cases, which we know is always raised right at the start of any discussion on sexual violence so as to discredit all potential, all women who might potentially come out. So, yes, these fan clubs are not, they cannot be taken lightly.
Anna, very quickly, I just want to ask you to, speak a little bit about when you talk about this kind of power group within the industry. It's a big commercial force, right? I think people often forget that. So just talk about their power in terms of not just making films and producing them, but also distributing and exhibition, and why there's such a skewing of power in that sense.
I feel like it's in the interests of the men who dominate an industry to ensure that the women in the industry aren't given a chance to establish themselves and get longevity and become as big stars as men. Because the more you do that, the more you can control the women. And the more you do that, the more you can monopolize as much of the pie as possible within the industry. And this is why the general, in the constantly in the public discourse, you will keep hearing, and even in interviews you will hear the male movie stars saying, it's not me that wants to replace, the heroine with a younger person, it's the public that wants it. But if you speak to producers, they will tell you that heroes are asking for younger and younger women to be working with them. And one thing, of course, is that then the focus of the film remains on the man. The woman you're acting with has less power to control what's going on in the film. And overall in the industry, and I don't think that this is happening just at an individual level and happening mindlessly. You recognize that overall in the industry, if you don't allow women to get become powerful stars and major stars, then they cannot question your authority. They cannot demand equal pay and better working conditions, and they cannot raise finances for films that are women centered, because it's a vicious cycle. If you don't allow them to become major stars, then they don't have the clout to get people to give them the money to make films that will make them major stars on their own. So it just goes on and on and on. And the men, it's very easy to say, why aren't the women turning producers? I remember a conversation I had with Riya Kapoor. It's a published interview on First Post. She told me, Anna, just speak to every single woman producer in this country, and you will recognize the minute they see you. It doesn't matter what the story is, whether it's centered around men or women. The minute they see you, they want to give you less money. The minute they see you, they want to give you less money. When people say money talks, they are talking bullshit, because money talks through a lens of prejudice. We've seen that it's not just about gender, Nantara. Remember a time when theaters in Delhi would not show anything but Hindi films? And every time one spoke to distributors and exhibitors, they said there is no demand for films in languages other than Hindi. But during the pandemic, the public forced them to change their minds about that, because the public that was exposed to the films in these languages on streaming platforms returned to theaters and wanted to see those stars in films in theaters too. So it's exactly the same thing. Money talks through a lens of prejudice, and we need to say this again and again and again. And when people justify the absence of good script centered around women, saying, oh, but women don't get opening day collections, again, it needs to be repeatedly pointed out to them. You are not giving women the opportunity to build themselves into the stars that would get those opening day collections. You are setting women up for failure. And this is not something that is happening without a plan. Patriarchy has a plan. Patriarchy closes ranks to ensure that that women aren't getting the roles that they deserve, so that they cannot get the power that they deserve. When you make huge money as stars, you can get finance to produce films, you make money through the productions, you can then you can then invest in distribution, you can then invest in exhibition, you get more power and you get more clout to subordinate women further. The reason why Dilip is able to do is the reason why there is so much of fear of Dilip in the Malayalam industry, including among men, major male stars, is because of the clout that he has because of money.
Anna, we spoke about kind of some of the ripple effects of the Hema Committee report outside of Kerala. Kind of structural reform do you hope to see in India's film industries? And how hopeful are you at the moment that any of it will happen?
I want to be careful about making predictions, but the reason why I'm hopeful about the Malayalam film industry is because now we've seen 7 years of the Women in Cinema Collective's persistence, and after 7 years, I don't see them giving up. And as long as they persist, and as long as the public continues to support them, see, the onus cannot be on them alone. As long as the public and the media continue to support them, I think there will be change. The patriarchal structure within the film industry itself and the political class will be compelled to change. As far as the women of the other film industries in this country are concerned, the difference between them and Kerala is there is a sort of a collective called the Voices of Women, I know, in the Telugu film industry, but with Kerala, there was a whole confluence of circumstances that has led to this point. The woman survivor who spoke up was a major star. Now, if she had not been a major star, the chances of her being heard by the industry and by the public and media are low. We know that. We know that when the Me Too movement started out in Hollywood, one of the things that very casually was said by people before people like, Uma Thurman and Salma Hayek came and spoke out, there were so many members of the public saying, oh, these are women who weren't able to make it in the film industry, so they are complaining, right? But in her case, she was a major star already, which means she had her own fan following. There is a certain love and affection for her. Because of that, the usual distrust with which any woman survivor is viewed was not trained on her. Second, the formation of this collective. Now, this collective, and I'm talking about the distinction between other Indian film industries and the Malayalam film industry, which will tell you whether or not there is hope for structural change in the other industries. WCC again did not consist of junior artists because WCC consisted of very well known, high profile women at the start. Now they have many more women who are at different level from different levels of the industry, not all of whom want to be publicly associated with WCC. But at the start, the founder members, they were well known women. The national award winning editor, Beena Paul, act Parvati Tiruvotha, uh, Padmapriya Janaki Raman, Rima Kallingal. These are all well known, respected people. So, because of that, there is a certain resonance. Anything that they said had resonance with the public. And there is a very memorable photograph that you will see in the media of the founder members of WCC meeting Pinarayi Vijayan, the Kerala chief minister. Now, for him in 2017, when they met him and asked for and put forward certain demands, and on that day was when they also announced to the public that they had formed this Women in Cinema collective. For him, it was a wonderful photo opportunity. Which politician say no to so many prominent women from a film industry coming to meet you, right? That photo opportunity for him has come back to haunt him, because that photo opportunity is that photo that he made sure he put out in the public is a reminder to the public that he made certain promises. In addition, there has been public and media support. Now, in the Bengal, Tamil, and Telugu industries, despite the fact that, despite, see, all of these circumstances haven't come together. But in the Hindi film industry, what you see is during the Me Too movement that happened in 2018, what you see is actually the exact opposite of what happened in Kerala. They haven't formed a collective. And initially, during Me Too, the men who were named were all the lesser known people, the people with less influence. The moment one of the biggest producers of the Hindi film industry was named by a woman, that Me Too movement shut down. In Kerala, in 2017, this movement started with a major woman star and the police investigating and finding the involvement in the crime of a major male star, one of the top in the industry. So, for the women of the Women in Cinema collective, that battle has started with the toughest fight you could think of, right? And also, the disadvantage that the Malayalam film industry has is also its advantage for women. Telugu, Tamil, and Hindi are much bigger industries, and therefore they have more money to put pressure on people to silence them. They have more money to organize themselves to silence women. They have more money to get image managers to advise them on what's the right thing to say and how to project themselves. So, therefore, they are more sophisticated in their public appearance in this regard, which is why it is their silence after the Hema Committee report, the silence from the Hindi film industry, which gets the maximum coverage in the Indian media, their silence studied, it is well thought out. It is not a casual silence. And I am assuming they are just hoping and praying that the national media's attention will die out and only the Kerala media will continue covering the Hema Committee report, which is why it is incumbent upon all of us to ensure that that doesn't happen. But if the media coverage across India of the Hema Committee report and complaints that are emerging from other states persists, and if the women of these film industries find the strength because they feel there is public support and media support, and if the political class steps up. So there are many ifs in this. And if the women of all Indian film industries decide to come together and derive strength from WCC, because WCC will tell you they are not a collective of women of the Malayalam film industry alone. So there are many ifs for other film industries, but I am very hopeful because the Hema Committee report, with all its flaws, is one of its kind.
And I'm going to ask you to give our listeners three recommendations. And these might be films to watch, or books to read, or podcasts to listen to. So, what would you
I
recommend?
want to use this opportunity to throw some light on Malayalam cinema. Because, like I said, the Malayalam film industry produces some
Mm-hmm.
of the most beautiful films in India, but it also produces some terribly regressive films. And the best of Malayalam cinema, I think,
Right.
is a reflection of the best of what we can be. So I would recommend a film called The Great Indian Kitchen, a Malayalam film directed by Geo Baby, which went viral across India during the pandemic and was looking at the oppression of a woman in an
Yeah.
upper caste Hindu household in a space that is familiar to all of us, the kitchen in our homes. It's a subject
Yeah.
that was staring every filmmaker in India in the face. But it took a Geo baby from the Malayalam film industry to see the potential for a film in it. There is also a film called Ullorika, which was released in theaters in India this year and
Mhm.
is now streaming. It stars Parvati Tiruvottu, who is one of the founder members of the Women in Cinema Collective, a lovely actor, along with Urvashi. It is
Mhm.
such a beautiful examination of patriarchy with so much intelligence, understanding that women can sometimes work against each other, and yet there is a possibility of alliances being formed between women and what those alliances could do for our
Right.
lives. And the third, I am torn between recommending a really bad film and a good film. Pick the filmography of KG George, who is a legendary Malayalam filmmaker, and he made such interesting films on women. But for a bad film, a specific film, I will direct you to a non KG George film, of course, because he was wonderful. The film Kasaba that I
Mhm.
spoke to you about, it's a terrible film, but it is important
Yeah.
for us to see the worst of Malayalam cinema also, because putting any society, any film industry on a pedestal is dangerous for that film industry and that society. Kasaba is the worst of what Malayalam cinema can be. And it's good for people to know that societies
Right.
are far more complex than the statistics that you read. Kerala is associated in the mindset in the rest of India with the state's literacy levels and its scenic beauty and its most beautiful cinema. And
Mm.
interestingly, only the most beautiful thinking Malayalam films have ended up making a lot of money in the rest of the country. The worst of Malayalam cinema ends up making money in the state or maybe in other southern Indian states. This also is
Mhm.
an interest. It's interesting. Why does the
Right.
public in the rest of India react in this way to Malayalam cinema? So, The Great Indian Kitchen, Ullorika, and Kasaba.
Thank you, Anna. I have watched The Great Indian Kitchen and it absolutely blew me away. That was Anna Vetticad on the State of South Asia podcast. This episode was edited by Ritika Chauhan. You'll find many more stories on politics and culture in South Asia on our website, himalmag.com. You can also listen to our other podcast, South Asia Review of Books, hosted by Shweta Srikantan, because South Asia deserves its own review of books. And don't forget to sign up for our newsletters to keep up with Himal's work. We'll be back soon with another in depth conversation on the next episode of State of South Asia with me, Nara Narayan. Thank you for listening and see you then.